Thank you so much, Steffi. And indeed, it's true. Relevancy is what I'm after. And I've been for about 20 years at MoMA. That's a long time. And I've been going through all different facets of design, from cute chairs and fast cars to video games, and now also the idea of violence. And 2 years ago at MoMA, I started a department of research and development that is concerned not only with design, but with the survival and the afterlife of museums in general. I believe that museums can be the R&D of society, especially if they start tackling issues that are truly urgent, that are truly relevant to the world. Design and Violence is a project that is quite unusual for a museum because it asks questions like this: is execution always ugly? Or, can we design a violent act to be more humane? Or is euthanasia a form of violence or a form of compassion? And what other secretive acts carried out on behalf of the public need to be made more visible? So all of these different questions are questions that you wouldn't expect to have asked in a museum setting, but actually artworks, and in particular design works, can lead us to have a conversation about these important issues. Violence is an important issue, and it's something that's been living with us ever since the beginning of time. This is Darwinism and the survival of the fittest just imagined for you all to see. But design can help us understand violence better. Design, for somebody like me, is a benign force. I always think that, I've been thinking in the past, that designers almost take a Hippocratic oath when they decide to become designers. So, hey, it can always be only for the good. Well, there are a few things that happened in the past years, and I'm talking about design-related things, that made me question this idea. The first one was, and I'll show you more of it later on, the 3D printed gun. When it came out, I was in shock because all of a sudden my Pollyannish world of design doing good for the masses was completely upheaved by a design act, an open source act that was so negative. And then other happenings, like for instance, Steven Pinker's book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, that argues that our society is becoming less violent, also gave me pause. But what do I know? I'm not a scientist. I don't have the benefit of the whole Harvard labs behind me. So the only thing that I know how to do is to look at design objects. But design objects can say so much, especially when they have an ambiguity that is part of them. I joined forces with Jamer Hunt, who is the director of the Transdisciplinary Design course at Parsons, and with Michelle Fisher and Kate Carmody. And we started with a definition of violence that is very broad, as you can tell. It's the manifestation of the power to alter the circumstances around us against the will of others and to their detriment. Big enough, I would say. And then subcategories, like every good curator would come to, a taxonomy, and you can think of violence as stun, manipulate, control, penetrate, hack, infect, all ways to kind of think of violence and design in a way that is more systematized. From that, we started looking at objects. And of course, the trick is to find objects that are ambiguous, that are not black or white, that are in all these different shades of gray that really make you think. And the first object that we published was this particular object, the scent of violence. We decided to publish as opposed to show in a display of a gallery because we wanted a dialogue to happen with the public. We wanted to really have everybody think of what design and violence could be. And this object, which you see here condensed in an ampoule, is a scent. I believe that scent is a form of design, and Cecil Tolas, who's a scent artist based in Berlin, thinks the same. And in this case, she distilled the scent of violence by going to cage fights and picking up the towels left behind by the fighters, and then using headspace technology to distill this disgusting sweat, feet, testosterone, kind of scent, which we then sent to Anne-Marie Slaughter, who at that time was still at Princeton and now is at the America Foundation, and we asked her to comment on this particular scent. So the construct is the object becomes the lens, a stimulus for a writer that has an expertise in violence, has written, studied, or really dug deep into this idea of violence to talk about the whole object and the issue. And at the end, we ask a question. Other objects that came later, the $1 million blocks special information visualization, which talks about blocks in inner cities where the government spends more than $1 million a year to keep inhabitants in prison. And you can see that Steven Pinker himself was kind enough as to provide the commentary. The stiletto heel, Camille Paglia, hey, who better? It was beautiful. We try to have objects that are after 2001 because we believe that in 2001, the idea of violence in the United States changed. For Europeans, that changed a little before perhaps, but that was a watershed. But in some cases, we go even before that. And also the Trevor Paglen classified aircraft symbols with a commentary by William Gibson. And as I mentioned to you before, the commentary could be really different. Christoph Niemann provided, I'm making a GIF myself here, provided this great GIF to talk about a project by Yosuke Ishigome, which was the idea that nations, instead of waging war against each other, could actually play games. And in some other cases, the commentary was also music. I told you about the question. The question is really important. In the case of the box cutter, such an iconic object after 2011, and after John Hockenberry provided his commentary, the question that we asked the public is, which other invisible everyday objects can become lethal weapons? And the comments started flowing in. Another case is the case of the digital attack map that was organized by Google Ideas. Gabriella Coleman provided the commentary, and then the question was, are denial of service attacks the most violent online threat, or is there something even more threatening out there? You can imagine what the question could be. This visualization was also quite beautiful. It was a visualization of the debt crisis of 2008. It's so difficult for normal people to understand what a CDO is and what actually happened in 2008. And this designer took it upon him to actually visualize what happened and display it to the public. And we asked Gillian Tett from the FT to actually write the commentary for us, and she was really great sport. And here is the question. Since we define violence as a manifestation of the power to alter circumstances against the will of others and to their detriment, can we regard the financial sector's action that led to the credit bubble as episodes of overt violence? Now, you usually don't expect to be able to discuss this kind of topics, especially connected to objects that all have an aesthetic quality that makes them worthy of the Museum of Modern Art. But the interesting thing is that the comments and the feedback from the public started flowing in, especially for some particular posts. For instance, this Republic of Salivation, which is a completely speculative example of design, in which the question asked was, do violent dystopian visions ever lead to positive substantive change? I really exhort you to go see the website because I've learned so much from how people reacted to these questions and to the objects. In some cases, with really interesting takes. In some cases, the commentary was negative, and I was telling you about the ambiguity. This is a beautiful project that looks at euthanasia as a possibility to actually experience death in a way that is almost fun. It's a roller coaster that is supposed to generate euphoria before killing you because of how it treats the brain and the acceleration that it provokes. Interestingly, we moved from this online debate to true debates in the real world. And we had 3 Oxford-style debates. I mean, it was not really Oxford, but it really worked out well. The first one was about open source, the second about designing empathy, and the third about eating animals. I was telling you about the first being about open source, and here is the 3D printed gun. That's kind of a pivotal object for many of us that work in design or that work in open source, that work in technology. It was a reminder of the fact that every technology is a double-edged sword and has 2 faces. And you know, for those of you that don't know enough about it, I'm going to show a video clip in a second. But it was really interesting because the debate motion was, we cannot limit open source design even when we do not support the consequences. And it was interesting because we were able to have the whole debate with Cody Wilson, the designer of the 3D printed gun, arguing for the motion, of course, and Rob Walker, the great writer and commentator, talking against the motion. We were able to keep the whole idea on open source and not on gun control. And you know, here's the 3D printed gun. When people think of open source, they usually think of something like the iWriter project, an example of generosity, altruism, and technology at the surface of mankind. You know, I don't have to explain to this audience the iWriter project, you all know it. And instead, here is the 3D printed gun, which is, just to remind you, can we lift a little bit the volume because the music is great. This is Cody with his 3D printed gun. It's called the Liberator. This is their video. And these are the different parts that, after being printed, get assembled to make the gun. The symbol of the company, Defense Distributed. So you see, it's very clear that there's an intent that is completely different from the one that we thought 3D printing could have. The second debate was really great about designing empathy, and it was based on the Menstruation Machine, which is a great object by Sputniko, who is now at the MIT Media Lab. It's a contraption that is meant to have men experience a complete menstruation. It has these electrodes that stimulate the lower abdomen and give you cramps, and then it has a reservoir in the back. You're supposed to draw your blood, put it in the back, and then it gets delivered in between the legs. So cramps, everything, the discomfort, everything is there. And it was really interesting because the motion was, in this case, design's potential to transcend gender boundaries is limitless. Are you for, against, or on the fence? Once again, it was a great debate, and it was even more fun because I was out of town, so Jamer had to moderate. And you see here, this is the Menstruation Machine as it was shown at the Museum of Modern Art in the exhibition Talk to Me in 2011. It was a really spirited conversation that touched upon men becoming pregnant, that touched upon also the augmented self and the idea of empathy, and when it goes beyond the powers that we have today, or even the latest Barney's campaign that you might have seen that is all about features only transgender models photographed by Bruce Weber. So really it was about the possibility of design to really transcend the kind of differentiation that keeps us apart, the barriers that keep us apart. The third and last for this season debate was about eating animals, and it centered on the serpentine ramp by Temple Grandin. You might know that she redesigned the slaughterhouse to make sure that cows are less terrified by the feeling, by the understanding, the reckoning of the fact that they're going to be slaughtered just around the bend. For the motion was design can allow us to humanely include animal products in our diet. For the motion was Nicola Twilley, a great anthropologist of food and the editor of the blog Edible Geography. And against was Gary Francione, who's a professor at Rutgers, and boy, a truly fanatic vegan. It was like a big, big conversation. And I have to say that, you know, of course, there were provocative slides that were brought by Nicola, and also there were all these different discussions about living with animals in a different way and being more humane towards animal, to end with the idea of the in vitro meat and to question the ideology, the vegan ideology. Is it a moral issue, or is it instead an issue of taste and of positioning in the world? So it was really quite a spirited conversation. And Ingrid Newkirk, who's the founder of PETA, is the one that provided the commentary on the website, which sparked so many comments. It goes on forever, and it's still going. You know, I'm not going to show you the video because it's too long. but you can see it online if you want. You just have to go to the website, which is designandviolence.moma.org, to continue the conversation. Today, we published another post, which is the Thompson Correctional Facility in Illinois, a supermax prison. So we're now questioning the design of prisons. And every week, we publish a new post. The project is online, available for everybody to see. We moderate comments lightly, only the ones that are truly stupid or truly insulting, but it's happened only once. And I have to say that this is a project that was a surprise for also the curators and indeed for MoMA, because we did it almost as a guerrilla grassroots project without telling anybody on a WordPress platform. And it's become almost like a flag for what curators can do when they really want to achieve something that is a little bit beyond or outside of the normal schemes of a museum operation. So I hope that you will visit online. I hope that you will provide your comments, and please be in touch with us if you have ideas or suggestions for other objects to include. Thank you very much.